Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from DeltaCX.com. We're a full service CX and UX agency, consultancy, and we do training in business transformation. So check us out. Maybe later after I've redone our website. Well, no, maybe by the time you're watching this, I've redone the website. Welcome to Tuesday Office Hours Ask Me Anything. Hi, I-10. I do this every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Italy time, so mark your calendars. And basically, I take absolutely any question on the planet that you have. Probably better if they're about CX and UX, but sometimes we do get questions that are not about that. So it's Ask Me Anything, and you get to ask. So I've got two questions that came in ahead of time. How does that happen? Through deltacx.link/ask. You can send me questions ahead of time, and I queue them up so that you are the first to get your answers. That means if you can't watch live, just check it for it in the Office Hours playlist over on the YouTube channel. And don't forget to subscribe, Usability, test that bell, and you'll find your answers there. And I was busy bee creating some new graphics this afternoon for the show. So all my graphics panel over here is in a new order, and I don't know what I'm doing. Kayleen, I see you have a question. Can you possibly be more specific maybe about what type of failure? Because I think there's different types and I might have different answers. All right. Hi, Chaitanya. I will add your question there, and then we'll add Kayleen's once I have a better sense of the context. Context, Kayleen, always important. Hello, Megan. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at him like, I can't be the only one doing that to you. Megan, good to see you. I hope you got some sleep after our late night messaging. It is Tuesday. All right, so the first question I got, super interesting, came in anonymously through deltacx.link/ask. And it says, I got this question at an interview. If you had two products and had to ask one question of users to determine which they preferred more, what would you ask? Audience, what would you ask? How would you answer that? So before I answer, I want to see what the chat room says. We've got a few people watching live in YouTube and LinkedIn. What would you ask if an interview question says, you only get one question to determine what users prefer, I guess, from two different concepts or designs or products? What would you ask? I know what I would ask because I saw this question earlier. So meanwhile, I see another question coming in from our old anonymous link, and I will add that to the list. Thank you for the person using the old link. And I will see what everybody says for this question. We'll make it a play along at home version. Is anyone typing? I can't tell. See, it's not like messaging where I know people are typing and I can wait for that. I only know that I've asked you a question. So let's see. I'll go into my answer and then we'll see what other people want to add. So it's not so much that I would ask people a question. I think it's more that I would give them a task, that I would set up some sort of moderated usability testing, and I would give them a task in each of these products. And I'm assuming that these products are similar or variations of each other or something like that. I mean, maybe they're completely different, but I'm assuming we're in some way comparing apples to apples. So we're comparing variation 1 of a product and variation 2, and we have to figure out which people prefer more. To me, it sounds like you would say you'd show them both to users and you would say, which one do you like more? That's not what I would do. And again, I don't know if I even have the right answer based on who this interviewer is, but I would probably answer that I would take the users through a common task or maybe multiple common tasks through a usability test. And I would watch how they complete the tasks. And of course, I can ask them after they've seen the two which one they prefer. But ultimately, I'm going to go by the task. So I would say this is less of me asking them a question and more about me observing them. I don't think this is the kind of thing I want to determine from a question, so I would probably tell them I think this is a trick question, because I wouldn't try to determine that with a question. But let's see what's coming in through the chat room. Let's see. Let's put some of these up on the board. Shelly is here. Good to see you, Shelly. How are things going? Shelly says, which is the greater problem solver? Yeah, I think we have to determine that from watching and not from asking, but that's just me. Chaitanya says, which is in LinkedIn, which I can't put on the screen, if you would have to recommend one of these to your friends, which one would you recommend? So like a little bit of a cousin of an NPS survey. Larry Marine is here, for which I'm always grateful. And Larry said the same thing I said. I wouldn't ask, I would watch. Thank you, Larry. Oh, I hit the wrong button. Sorry, I reordered all of my effects because I added new ones today. In fact, Larry, I want you to see one of the effects that I added today. Voom. What do you think? New effect. So reordered all my effects. I10 says, it depends. Do they know both products? Have they tried both before? So yeah, I think it is a little bit of a trick question. I'm not sure there's a question that, oops, I'm really hitting all the wrong buttons today. This is going to be fun. This is going to be the accidental effect show. Yay me. Yeah, that's how I would answer that. I would say, there really isn't a question that captures which of these two products is better for whatever is the user's pain points or task or mental model or needs. I would want to see which one is a better match by running them through a preferably moderated usability test where I can see what they're doing and poke a little bit into that. Larry goes, there you go, pushing all the wrong buttons again. I know, you can have effects. Ooh, wait, I accidentally just wrote that. Ba-dum-ba. I don't have that sound, Darren does. All right, cool question. Another one I got ahead of time sounds like this. How do researchers figure out who in the company should be invited to their meetings and presentations about research if the researcher is not part of a product team? Okay, so it sounds like you're in a general research universe. Maybe it's an R&D team or it's a UX team, but you research things more generally. I remember this at Macy's. I remember, for example, I remember the research team at Macy's at one point researching what are people's perceptions of pricing? What looks like a deal to them? What looks like not a deal to them or a bad deal? And so that wasn't necessarily related to any one thing, but think about all the projects that touched. Think about all the areas of the site that touched. And that's who I would probably be thinking about inviting to a research readout or presentation is, who does this touch? Obviously, platonically and appropriately. So who in the organization is connected to this because of the domain of the person? I would certainly want to invite product managers and maybe even higher. This might be for program managers. It might be for portfolio managers, because I believe, and I'm going to be pushing for, and I didn't finish all my graphics today because I will make a graphic on this, that when we think about the end-to-end customer experience, we've got to start having research influencing what we even build. And so that's the whole feature-based versus task-oriented thing that I wrote on Medium last week. If you check my Medium articles, you'll find that one. So I think that I would invite people in more of the product areas and the UX people who might be assigned to those domains so they can benefit from that, but probably product, program, portfolio, UX people from the domains that this connects to. Possibly an engineering lead if you want to as well. I mean, spread the research love, but that's probably who I would show it to based on whose domains it touches. You know, if it's general research about pricing, then there's probably whoever owns the PDP, you know, the product detail page, maybe somebody who owns the cart or checkout, you know, anywhere where that price is going to show up, maybe somebody from marketing in that case. I think you can't go wrong inviting a pile of people to your research presentation, and make sure that in the invite, you are clear in the invite what the agenda is. I hate when I just get meeting invites and I don't know what this is about or why. So you can say, these are the insights and opportunities that we found after doing a 2-month research project on how our users perceive whatever. And people go, "Ooh, that sounds interesting." You know, and you might say, "And I'm inviting you because I believe this connects to your domain and your job." So try that. Thanks for the question. Next, we got some other stuff cooking here. Oh, and it looks like Larry has a comment. Let's take a look. We'll have to do another office hours with Larry. Larry says, put it up on the board, "How many folks get to do user research outside of an existing project as a way to find new opportunities?" That sounds like a good interview question to assess a company's maturity model. Yeah, tack it on to yesterday's show where we talked about questions you should ask while you're being interviewed. That's a neat one. Like, are we just doing general research? I think that's great. All right, next question that I got says, "Can you help me?" Okay, this was here. This was... Oh, I guess it's from LinkedIn. Let's see who this was. Chaitanya. "Can you help me understand the pros and cons for working for a service company like Cognizant versus working for a product company?" I think ultimately that's going to be up to you, and if you happen to have preferences there. Some people prefer to work with digital products. They like to do wireframing related to screens and interfaces and do the digital design type of stuff. When you are talking about a service-based company, then you are probably talking more about service design, service blueprinting, customer journey mapping, and there may or may not be a digital product that is involved in that. So I think it really plays more into what you prefer. If the company offers, I'm not familiar with Cognizant. I mean, it's a well-known brand, but I have to admit I kind of don't know what they do, other than spelled Cognizant wrong. If this is really services, then let's Google this. Can anyone tell me what Cognizant does? I don't even know. I've heard of it, and I just don't know. Cognizant. Digital solutions to advance your business. Business consulting, information technology, and outsourcing services. So wait a minute, does that mean they're just reselling you? And either way, you're going to be doing the same work? Oh, I'm getting their Italian site. Lavoro innovativo, stimolanti percorsi di carriera. It just sounds like they're a staffing agency or a middle person, or I mean, you're saying it's a service company, but it sounds like they're just in the middle. Chaitanya, are you still here? Can you help me understand what they're doing? Larry says agency/consulting. Yeah. Are you saying the difference between working directly for a company or coming into a company as a consultant? Because you, depending upon Cognizant's relationships with people, you might end up on the product team. It depends on whether they treat people as outside consultants doing projects or whether they treat people as embedded on their clients' teams. So I don't know. It's hard for me to speak to that because I'm not too sure. Because again, Cognizant might be having you do digital design for a product team. So I don't think I can answer this one very well because again, I feel like I'm missing context. Speaking of context, Kayleen, did you ever give me more information on your question about bouncing back from failure? What kind of failure, or do you want me to answer that extremely generally? Chaitanya says, yes, coming in as a consultant. Okay, so if you're coming in as a consultant, you usually still have stakeholders at the company. You may or may not be connected to a product team. Sometimes you are, sometimes you're not. I don't know Cognizant in particular. I'm just talking in general about the agency consultancy world. So this is super general. But I would say that sometimes you're embedded in a product team and sometimes you really are an outside consultant. And what's the pros and cons of that? To me, there's a mountain of pros for working for agencies and consultancies, but it really depends on how they work. In general, I prefer agencies and consultancies, but it really depends on how they work. You know, we all know somebody who works for famous consultant firms and they're unhappy. They're seeing a lot of bullshit and carnage. They're talking to HR, their manager, they're documenting risk. We've all seen that. So it really depends what Cognizant's relationship with this client is and how this project is being run. It also depends on how this project was scoped. I've seen projects scoped incredibly badly, and that meant you had to do the wrong thing for the project or an unreasonable amount of stuff in a stupid amount of time because that's what they sold the client. So there's great agencies and there's not great agencies. And honestly, I don't know enough about Cognizant to say whether or not you're going to have likely to have a good experience there or not. Vazia says, Cognizant are exactly what Larry says, consultants, externals. Larry says, I hear the question is single product over time, lots of products, fairly short bursts. Yeah, so Chaitanya, I'm sorry. These are really good questions for the hiring manager. If you're being considered for a job right now, and good luck, I would say, well, Kayleen, I meant like any particular type of failure or just failure in general. So back to Chaitanya. I think you have to talk to your hiring manager and say, what kinds of jobs might I be put on? What kinds of projects might I be put on? What role would I play in these projects? What relationships do we have with this client? Do they see us as a partner and a consultant, or am I really just a worker bee or order taker, just getting things done for them? I don't think it's unfair to ask these questions because agencies tend to have very varying relationships with clients, and it's hard to know what you're walking into, which is why you might need to ask, hey, Austin, how have you been? I've been following your LinkedIn posts. I hope you're well. Chaitanya, is that helping? I wish I could say something more helpful, but I think this is just the kind of thing you might have to talk to a hiring manager about, especially if you are interviewing for a job. I think also another question is if you are on a client team and something needs to be escalated, who does it get escalated to? Does it get escalated through the product team and the client, or does it get escalated up to Cognizant? I think someone else from the Low Ego Action Heroes was having trouble with that recently. Chaitanya says, thanks for the feedback, Debbie. I understand your point. It's about getting into why. Yeah, I think we just have to find out, again, if this is a potential job that you're considering, ask these questions to them. Like, what's going on here? Am I placed on a product team? Am I external to it? If I'm external to it, what is my relationship to them? Are we partnered in some way? I would just be asking all of these questions to make sure I truly understand the nature of the relationship. If they say something like, well, we don't know what project we're going to put you on yet, which agencies sometimes say or do, say, well, in general, what kinds of relationships do you tend to have with your clients? Do we tend to come in as consultants where people listen to us and we get to drive the bus? Or do we tend to come in as a little bit of workshop facilitators and order takers and people who are like a spare pair of hands? We got to find out. So there you go. All right. So let's try Kayleen's question, and then we'll try the question that came in anonymously. And remember, if you'd like to ask a question, you can ask it here in the LinkedIn or YouTube chat, as well as anonymously through deltacx.link/ask. And so let's get Kayleen's question in, copy paste. So Kayleen's question was, how do you bounce back from failure? Now, of course, my question was, what kind of failure? Because I think I tend to deal with different things in different ways. But let's try talking more generally about failure and dealing with failure. So we did episode, I think it was 61 on resilience. I think that that's going to be an important thing to watch. It definitely helped me. It kind of changed my life a little bit. So it changed the way I was doing things, and it was really helpful. We had a good guest. So how to bounce back from failure. I think my main advice would be to put it into perspective. What was this failure? And what does this mean? In the scheme of things, it's probably not so big and it's probably not so bad. I usually tell people, let yourself feel bad about whatever it was for a few hours or a few days, and then refocus yourself on whatever your goal is. You've got to keep those goals in mind. So if this is a failure of you interviewed and then you didn't get the job and it's really upsetting, it's definitely upsetting. Let yourself be sad about that and then go, okay, that wasn't the place I was meant to be at. I still have my goal, moving on. If the failure is something else, that's why it's hard for me to guess what the failure is, and you don't have to tell us what it was. But I think the keys are resilience and putting it in perspective. I fail at stuff all the time, and then I go, okay, what is going to be a better solution for this? And I start working out possible outcomes and scenarios. That's just my personality type. And so I don't fail at a lot of things, but I definitely mess things up, and I'm okay with that because I feel badly about it and I put it into perspective and I start solving my own problem again. Austin says, part of the problem with failure is celebrate failure culture. It's an attempt to not feel bad about the failure. Feeling bad is important. Make space for the failure. Re-engage with value. Austin says, from someone who fails constantly. Look, if you're not, the fact that you tried, is great. Whatever it was, I'm proud of you for trying whatever it was. And if you failed at it, then you learned. What did we were talking about that just maybe yesterday. When you mess stuff up, it's a learning opportunity. If you're smart enough to use it as a learning opportunity. So remember, it's an opportunity to get refocused on your goals. Maybe change your goals. Maybe you go, gosh, now that I went through that, maybe that's not what I want. Maybe it's this other thing. And that's okay too. So rethink your goals if maybe they're right and maybe you want to change them, and see what you can learn from this, and then think about a new set of possible outcomes. That's what I would do, but I'm a fleshy-headed mutant. Itan says, I agree. Let yourself feel bad. Take your time. Yeah, some of I had a very disappointing Friday, and I felt extremely bad. And I wouldn't say I necessarily felt like I failed, but I was very sad and I was crying. And Saturday, I still felt blah. And then Saturday, I started having some fresh ideas for my own world and things I could write and things I could work on. And Larry's book came into my email. I said, ooh, I could look at this again. And so yeah, whether it's failure or just disappointment, even if you didn't fail, but something crappy happened anyway, like people who know what happened to me on Friday, that's just disappointment and it hurts, and let yourself be there and feel that, and then move on and find people to talk to. I think letting it out and talking about it really helps. And so thanks to the people who talked me through my tough weekend. Thanks to Aitan for the virtual hugs, virtual huggiest person I know. Thanks to the people who saw me through my disappointment this weekend, which were certainly boyfriend Pier Mario, good friends Tarina and Chris Lenhart. Kayleen was really supportive of me. Thanks to her for our time there. Ralitza was super supportive, and she was following along with a lot of it too. So, thanks to everybody for that support. It was really helpful. And also thanks to the people who knew that I needed a little time before I wanted to talk about it. So I think that's helpful too. I'm sometimes a sit with it a little bit myself person before I'm a talk to other people about it person. We all just have different styles. And let's see. And Larry says, reassessing your goals isn't limited to failing, even after successes. Larry says, I've learned to adjust based on my new knowledge. Also very true. Super true. Okay, so we've got some, let's see, we've got some questions coming in anonymously. The first one says, what's the difference between UX design and information architecture? Oh my God, I'm so excited. I get to roll out the graphic I made this afternoon. Y'all are going to see just how bad an artist I am. I'm so PowerPoint. All right, ta-da. Okay, this is my new user-centered design graphic replacing the circle with all the circles. So basically, information architecture, here we are. Basically, when people think of UX design, they often think over here, wireframing and prototyping. Oh yeah, and I wrote accessibility on that too. So interaction design is usually people think wireframing and prototyping. That's our interaction design. Information architecture is something different. I would refer you to what I think was episode 104 with Abby Covert, famous information architect and author who helped us learn more about what information architecture is. So I would say go check out that episode. If you can't find it, go to YouTube and write Delta CX information architecture. It will pop right up. Oh, Mags, I see your question and I will get that on the list. I10 says, this is such a wholesome channel. Mostly UX, sometimes drama, sometimes therapy sessions. I agree. It's definitely all those things. Therapy hour. So back to the question. In my opinion, when I think about UX design, I believe UX design mostly lives here in my infographic, information architecture and interaction design. Now, you can do some information architecture before you're doing interaction design. You might be doing it as part of your research artifacts. You might be doing it when you're doing your task analysis and task optimization. I think there's information architecture in there. You kind of can't get away from information architecture. But I know when people think of UX design, they usually think of the interaction design because it's so tangible to be able to have wireframes and prototypes. So ultimately, I think information architecture is, as American TV commercials would say, part of this complete breakfast. You really can't separate information architecture from anything else in the user-centered design process. So it's not that I think there's information architecture and then there's UX design. I think information architecture is something we use in many of the phases and tasks and artifacts along our user-centered design adventure. So that's what I would say to that question. I hope that helps. Let me know if you have a follow-up question. New graphic. All right. The next question that came in anonymously says, what's the worst UX job you've ever had? You know, I think okay, story time. Kayleen, put on the cup of tea, get a pillow. I think that there's a few different worst jobs I've had for kind of different reasons. I had one job that interviewed me and was like, oh my God, we need you for your skills and your expertise and your abilities. We have this big problem that we're having trouble solving. It was a famous agency. We launched this big website for a very famous local healthcare system, and the website's not performing well, and we're supposed to fix it, and it's a lot of information architecture, and we think you're gonna be great with it. And so of course I got there, and what I quickly found was a few things. Number one, they kind of didn't want it fixed, because if this was so bad, how did they sell it to the client? And if this was so bad, how come they didn't know that before it went live? So the more that I wanted to fix and change, the more they were like, uh-oh, how are we going to explain to the client why we didn't do that in the first place? And then every time I went to design something, the lead on the project, the lead UX person on the project would tell me, no, you're not here to design anything. Just make some wireframes of other people's ideas. And every time I would design something, she would tell me, no, I don't want you to design anything. Just wireframe the ideas we've been talking about in meetings. We'll have meetings to brainstorm, and you just wireframe what we come up with in the brainstorms. And after a few weeks of that, I went into the HR office and I said, here's my laptop and here's my badge. I said, you're overpaying me. I said, you really want a junior production designer. I said, this is ridiculous. I'm supposed to be solving this problem, and I'm blocked at every point to solve your problem. You don't want your problem solved. You don't want me. And they called in like the project manager. And she was like, well, you haven't been paying attention in meetings very much lately. I said, absolutely true. Why should I pay attention in meetings? You're not letting me design. You're just going to give me orders later on what wireframe you want made. So yeah, I'm not paying attention in meetings. There's no reason for me to. And they all just kind of looked at me like. So I was like, and here's my badge and here's my laptop. Bye. And that was probably one of the most famous agencies on the planet. So that was an unfortunate experience. I think, it wasn't a bad job in the sense of crazy people, but it was a bad job in the sense of a job. It was one of those jobs that I quit without having another job to go to. It was like, I don't know where I'm going to work tomorrow, but it can't be here. And I was just like, bye. There was another job where I'd been working there 7 months. I'd gotten nothing but good feedback. I found out later that someone meant to give me negative feedback for things they wanted me to improve, but they forgot to schedule the meeting with me 7 months in. So after hearing nothing but good stuff, I made an appointment with the CEO. It was a small agency to do a PowerPoint for him that I'd worked up to show how they could sell more UX work and get more business and revenue and so on. And I scheduled a 2-hour meeting so that I could go through this PowerPoint and tell him all of my ideas of how we're going to grow his agency. And like 1 or 2 slides in, he started shouting at me about how bad my work was and why weren't my wireframes pixel perfect with final graphic design and client branding and stock photos. And I was like, when you interviewed me, I told you I don't do that. When you interviewed me, I told you I do more traditional UX, not UI work, and you have a whole graphic design team. And my boss was in the room and she was like, yeah, remember we interviewed her and picked her because she does UX correctly? And unfortunately, my boss didn't stand behind me the rest of the meeting. But for 2 hours, this guy yelled at me about how replaceable I was and how my work was terrible and it doesn't even have the right colors and branding. And look at my font sizes. And it was just surreal. And it just seemed to go on and on and on and on. And after that, I just left the room. And I went straight over to HR and I said, I just got shouted at for 2 hours by the CEO in a meeting where I was supposed to tell him how to grow his business and do more UX work. I think this is my last day here. And I'm going to suggest that you not replace me because he clearly doesn't want UX. He just wants graphic design and visual design. And she's like, well, some people have been unhappy with your work. I said, well, when were they going to tell me? She goes, nobody told you? I said, no, nobody told me. Oh, they were supposed to have told you. And I said, okay, what was wrong with my work? Some people thought you were too conservative in your designs. And I was like, okay, well, don't forget to tell me. Okay. Anyway, I said, here's what I'll do. If this guy apologizes to me today, I'll stay. But if he doesn't apologize to me, today's my last day. And please don't replace me. And long story short, he didn't apologize, and I left that day, and they didn't replace me. Larry says, a UX team is facing the axe supposedly from budget. Oh, this is a question. Okay. All right. Thank you for listening to some of my stories. I have had a lot of ugly jobs for different reasons. Many of the endings of my jobs have been ugly. Usually because of some weird person being manipulative or just cutting the budget on me or whatever. So, I get lots of weird things. So we've got Maggie's question, Larry's question, and then the question that just came into my email just a minute ago. So we will keep answering people's questions. I hope that was a good story time for you. Megan says, okay, don't forget to tell me. I love it. Yeah, I got that from one of my favorite comedians I have a record. I have it as a record, everybody. That's how old this is. And on the record, he starts crying, fake complaining that he never won a Grammy. And he's like, God, I never want to, he's going through this whole thing. And then finally he goes, like, to the sound man. He goes like, hey, can we edit that out? And the guy presses the talk back button and he goes, yeah, we can edit that out. And then the comedian goes, well, don't forget to do it. And of course, the joke is that it's on the record. So that always rings in my head when these things happen, where it's like, well, don't forget to tell me. Larry says, oh, I've been lucky to be part of your success stories. For sure, Larry. A lot of my lack of success stories have been at weird agencies in San Francisco and weird corporate environments. But obviously, you've been working with me at my own company where I make sure we don't have wacky ass clients and we retain control of projects. All right. Maggie asks, you hinted at this earlier, but I'm curious. Why do you prefer agencies over consultancies? All right, that's a little bit of a weird question because to me, agencies and consultancies to me are kind of in the same bucket. I know that people at these companies differentiate between them, but I think of what Delta CX does as kind of both. Like, I don't know what to call us. We're kind of an agency in the sense that you might hire a marketing agency or a UX agency or whatever, but we're certainly also a consultancy because we are critical thinkers and strategists who can come in and do consulting. So I've tried to play with both words over the years for my own business. And I always found that Americans seem to make more sense of agency and non-Americans seem to make more sense of consultancy. So I just call Delta CX kind of both, depending upon who I'm talking to. I think I'm probably saying consultancy a little bit more right now, but I mean, we're also hired guns. We can be an agency. But in general, the question might really mean to say, why do I prefer agencies and consultancies over corporate jobs? And I just find that in general, when someone like me is being brought into a company or a project as an expert, I find that the project is much more under control, where someone says to me, hey, Debbie, this is the outcome we need, or this is the end future state we're trying to get to. How do we get there? And I can say, okay, great. Let me scope this project out and come up with a project plan and draw up my Gantt chart and tell you how this is going to go. And this is the time I need. And this is what I'm going to do at that time. And the agency can tell you how much it's going to cost, and boom. And once in a while, people will push back and be like, oh, do you really need that much time for research? Or, oh, can you do? But in general, people I found are less likely in the agency consultancy world to poop on my project plan than in the corporate world. In the corporate world, it's like, we're agile. Can you have this ready tomorrow? And then in the agency and consultancy world, because by the time a company is going outside of their existing teams to an agency or consultancy, shit's usually on fire. And so the question is, what is it going to take to solve these problems? And if I come in and say, this is what it takes to solve the problems, they might push back on me a bit and I might have to negotiate. But I find in general, I'm treated more as an expert than as the spare pair of hands that's come in to make a wireframe. But I think that's also the way I conduct these projects. I make sure I never do anything that makes it look like I'm a spare pair of hands, or I'm just taking orders, or will someone just please tell me what to do? Larry, Austin says, my ideal post-Air Force job is an agency or consultancy. Yep. Larry says, remember, you're the Mary Poppins of UX. I know, and I've recently had to fly away, and it was sad. So that's, Mags, does that help? Did that address what you were curious about? I'm hoping I hit the mark there. I'm also hoping I don't look too terrible. I decided not to turn on all of my lights because the sun is still up. So this is what I look like. Anyway, okay, now we've got Larry's hypothetical asking for a friend question, and it looks like this. It says, a UX team is facing the axe, supposedly from budget cuts. What would you suggest they tell their leadership to spare that team? I have never seen that one work. So we can talk about what they can try to say to spare themselves, but I haven't seen that work yet. So first of all, if you're not able to, thank you, darling, thank you. I was just telling someone, Larry, about you look marvelous, and maybe it's my boyfriend. It's like someone who had no frame of reference for 1984 Saturday Night Live. Yeah, I think it was my boyfriend. So if people think there's no value in UX, and very often it is the first team to be cut because people think we need marketing, we need engineers, we need this other people, who can we get rid of? Oh, those weird artsy fartsy hipsters. If they think that little of UX and they're about ready to cut you for budget, chances are you're not going to be able to be like, hey, wait a minute, we're problem finders, problem solvers, and risk mitigators. It's like, it's a little bit too late to make sure they understand what we do and the importance of us in the process. Chances are they've already diminished us and minimized us in the process so that it looks like if they cut us, it probably wouldn't make that much of a difference. We'll just have product managers make wireframes. Someone will make them pretty and engineers can build them. So I am not sure, unless their leadership is saying, hi, there's a chance we might not cut you. Come on in and give us a presentation and prove why you need to stay, then really they're going to have to find success stories from what they've been doing so far, if there are any. Are there any success stories that are fairly directly related to something UX researched, designed, built? Or are there any stories of things that they talked people out of building because they were going to be disasters, therefore money saved? Or are there any disaster projects that we can point to where something went live and it wasn't a good match to our users or customers and it had to be removed or undone or fixed later or reworked or whatever? Then you say, see this? When you have UX in the process correctly, this doesn't happen. We don't release something to the public and find out later that it was a sad, dead dog. We would know much earlier when our concepts or our designs are going in the wrong direction because testing is part of UX's build, test, learn, build, test adventure. And we would have saved us from all of that wasted time and money and so on. So I think those are some of the things you can shoot for. But again, if it's a company that already doesn't really believe in the value of UX and thinks that we're easily replaced by product managers and BAs making wireframes and some graphic designer making it pretty, you're probably not going to be able to convince them. And that will not be your fault. It's not your fault if you can't convince people they're wrong about something they're wrong about. Oh, sorry, Kayleen. Nothing sadder than a dead dog. All right. So we've got a question coming in. I think this one was anonymous. I don't think this came up on the chat room. It says, can you please give an example for good research plan versus bad research plan? Problem, questions, methods, deliverables. What should it entail? How? Isn't it hard because projects change a lot? Everything can go upside down. Okay, so this is a question so big it probably needs its own episode, but we did do a micro lesson on planning research. I would say go into the micro lessons playlist over in the YouTube universe. Subscribe while you're there. And look for the micro lesson on planning observational research. I probably go into a little bit of things there about things we want to plan and things we don't want to plan, but I'll give you a few examples off the top of my head here while we're at it. So to me, a bad research plan doesn't have goals. The goals are your North Star. If you do not have some good goals in the research plan for why are we doing this research and what are we expecting to learn or clarify or understand or test or validate or improve, if you don't have clear goals, you're probably going to end up asking some of the wrong questions. So remember, these all kind of go in a row. Your goals are going to help you later pick some of the right people to talk to. Your goals are going to help you make sure you're asking the right questions or giving people the right tasks to go through in whatever this is. So I would say that one of the worst things you can do would be no goals or wrong goals. I often see from research newbies some wrong goals. Now, not all the time, but sometimes. And I think an example of wrong goals would be, we want to see if people like this. You know, we really don't. Liking something is a side effect of it matching their needs. We want to see if it matches their needs. If it does match their needs, then we could get emotional outcomes like they liked it or it was delightful. But we don't really, the research is never really shooting, or the testing is never really shooting for, do people like this? So don't get caught up in that newbie mistake. It's pretty common. So I would say that's accidentally a bad research plan. Another bad research plan would be to validate something. And I mean literally, let's make sure we prove this was good. Let's make sure we prove people like this idea. Let's make sure we prove this design is good enough. Let's make sure we prove whatever the stakeholder was hoping to hear. I do see that from time to time from people who feel very under pressure to make people feel good, but that would be a bad research adventure. Let's see. I10 says, can goals be general for generative research? Absolutely. I like to not have hypotheses in general. I know that's not what's generally being taught, but in research, I like to stay away from hypotheses because I feel like as soon as I have them, I've put everything in a box, and I might even accidentally end up with biases, or some people will accidentally or on purpose want to prove their hypotheses. So I am a no hypotheses person. And for generative research, I will generally write very general goals. I know that was gener a lot, but I will tend to write very general goals. You know, we are looking to learn people's habits, preferences, behaviors around shopping for X type of product. We are looking to learn people's, understand people's end-to-end tasks, including decision-making related to whatever this is. So I think that it's okay to have some general goals, but then make sure that you've picked the right people and asked the right questions or done the right tasks to answer those questions. I think it's a mistake at any level, newbie or otherwise, to accidentally build a research universe that doesn't really answer our goals. Larry says, doesn't the research plan or process change with the progress or stage of the project? Well, sure. I mean, again, you have to have a good research plan for whatever you're trying to learn. So if you, based on where you are, what are you trying to learn? Are you trying to learn if your early concept is going in the right direction? Then you've got a plan that has goals related to that. Are you trying to learn more about people and behaviors and mental models and contexts and so on? Then you're going to write a plan around that. Austin says, I saw something really interesting about hypothesis-based versus non-hypothesis-based research and discovery. Basically, non-hypothesis leads to a broader range of search and deeper understanding of outcomes, of problems. Well, this is good news for me because I've been telling people for quite some time that I don't believe in having hypotheses. I just got the feeling they put you in a box. I had not read what Austin found, so it's nice to hear that there's someone else who agrees. I'm sure there are many people who disagree. A lot of people believe that since this is supposed to be the scientific method, that we have to start with hypotheses. But I believe that hypotheses, I like to joke that hypotheses are Greek for guesses. These are guesses and assumptions that could possibly accidentally or on purpose skew our research, and we don't want that. That would be the official bad research. Skewed research is bad research. Yeah, Austin, definitely share. You probably won't be able to post it to YouTube. YouTube blocks a lot of URLs on the assumption that the people posting URLs are spammers. But I would say if you can maybe message it to me on LinkedIn, since we're connected, I can add it to the YouTube description after the show. You could also post it in the research channel on our Slack community. If you're not in our Slack community, everybody, deltacx.link/join Slack. It is completely free. There are no monthly or annual memberships, so come on down. Thanks, Austin. We look forward to seeing that. I am caught up on questions. So if anybody has any questions, we've got a few more minutes. And let's see, just checking for questions. I think I got them all. If I missed your question or you have a follow-up question, please shout out now. I do sometimes miss questions, though completely accidentally. What else is going on? Oh yeah, we've got the next couple of days off on the stream, so I'll see everybody. There is no show tomorrow. I will see everybody Friday for reaction stream. If you'd like to send in something wacky for me to react to, you can send it to deltacx.link/reaction. And hey, we've got our new giveaway, everybody. We've got our new September into early October giveaway. We want to thank everybody at UX Tweak, not sponsored. They're going to give me 6 1-month free coupons. Actually, they already gave them to me. 6 1-month free coupons. So I'm going to give them away to you. What happened was UX Tweak got wind that I was showing UX Tweak in my recent micro lessons when I talked about setting up and interpreting unmoderated research. And they somehow found out that I'd been talking about them in the video, and they wrote to me and they said, oh my gosh, thanks for doing that. We want to give you 6 months free. And I wrote them back and I said, because of my not sponsored policy, I will not take anything that financially benefits me, because I don't want anybody to ever think that I'm naming a company because I financially benefit from it. So I said, how about you break that 6-month free into 6 free months, and we'll give them away to the listeners and the watchers. So if you are curious about trying UX Tweak and you agree that their 5-day free trial is too short, please enter the giveaway once at deltacx.link/giveaway. And in a few weeks, I'll do a drawing. They said that the coupons will be good, I think, into early February. And you'll be able to use 1 month free of UX Tweak. Again, not sponsored. They're not paying me. They don't sponsor this show. They were trying to offer me something for free, and I refused it. That's how we roll here. Same for Michelle Ronson. You can get $50 off her courses by saying you came from me, because she was going to give me that $50, and I said no. Let's see. So Veracitus says, do you use hypothesis in usability testing? I don't use hypothesis anywhere. If you go back and watch my my how to plan your research stuff and all that, you'll see I don't do hypothesis anywhere, because again, I'm afraid of it skewing research or possibly it's just guesses and assumptions. Larry says, no, hypothesis comes from this Greek word. But Larry, my Greek is terrible. And Pier Mario's not here. And I don't know what that says. I know that in Italian they say ipotesi. Let's see. I10 has a follow-up question. Let's add that in. Does everybody in the product team need to see research plans in advance, or product managers and supervisors? Yeah, what I tend to do is I will tend to show the research plan to anybody who is part of that team or has a horse in the race, just to make sure remember, this is where you have to keep control of a project, not because you need them to check your work. So you have to choose your words carefully. Hey, I'm showing everybody my plan so that if there's anything that you were hoping to learn from this research that isn't in this plan now, we can make sure we add it. See how I didn't give up control of the plan or the research by saying, do you guys like the questions I'm asking? So make sure that you are keeping control of this stuff. To me, this is part of stakeholder management. So yeah, otherwise I'm happy to show multiple people the plan. I just am going to phrase it in a certain way to try to keep control of the project. Chiranjit is here. Good to see you again. Let's put your question down too. Larry says, I just wanted to hear you try pronouncing that. Well, then we need Pier Mario. He claims to be able to sound out Greek. And I see someone who says LinkedIn user, so I apologize. I can't tell who you are. And we will add your question as well. And then we're going to be out of time. So the bar is closed, everybody. No more questions. We're done. Thank you to I10 for the biceps. Okay, so Chiranjit says, product owner and UX consultant stepping on each other's toes. How do you handle this situation avoiding conflict? Now, of course, if you had a project or team charter at the beginning of stuff, you would have hopefully knocked a lot of that out before it even happened. So it's really important. These project and team charters will say, here's what UX is doing, here's what product or project is doing. Is there an overlap? No, there's no overlap, whatever the case may be. If these people are stepping on their toes and you are not able to resolve this, and again, even NNG recently published an article about how product thinks their work includes UX, and UX often thinks their work includes product management. So there's a wacky overlap, and I think our October 4th show is going to cover that a little bit as well. But whenever there's conflict on a team, I usually want to escalate it or bring in somebody who's neutral. So maybe can the project manager help? Can a scrum master or agile coach help? Can your manager help? Who can help get this team on the right page? Did I just go all pink? So I think that we're going to have to get some outside help if you and the product manager are not able to work this out yourselves. If you're not able to go to the product manager and say, hello, everything on this graphic is mine. Research, information architecture, interaction design, prototyping, testing. Sure, we're partners, but I'm doing this stuff. If you're not able to do that and they're going, no, I want a wireframe too, then sometimes I go, well, I want to do a product roadmap. You're going to let me do a product roadmap? And then usually they're like, no. And I'm like, aha. So you probably need intervention from a neutral person or escalating to people above you to help get this team on track, and work with your manager and other people so that in the future you can try to have project or team charters at the beginning so that it can be clear who is going to do what, and that way you don't have to deal with this in the future. It's better to work it out up front and say, UX is doing wireframes and blah, 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 and product is doing this and this. And when we collaborate, UX is doing UX and product is looking at it from the perspective of a product owner, not from the perspective of I'm trying to do the UX too. All right. And LinkedIn user has a question. Chiranjit says, influence someone who can influence. I hope so, because if you don't have that influence and this can't be resolved amongst you, then you're going to have to ask somebody to come in and say, okay, here's what you're doing, here's what you're doing. And again, it could be project, your manager, scrum master, agile coach, whoever is supposed to be responsible in some way for this team manager, I don't know. All right, last question from LinkedIn, and I apologize, it's not giving me your name. My system just says LinkedIn user, and it says, how do you approach different kinds of projects, like community-oriented projects? What approach of research do you think is effective? So first, let's just say clearly, I've never done a community-oriented project. Pretty much all of my projects have been B2B or B2C. And so it wasn't like business to community. Where there is community, I immediately start thinking of ethnography and anthropology. And so I would say that that research is probably going to need to be a little bit more in that ethnographic and anthropological corner of the world. Sure, it's still psychology and human behavior, but once I start thinking about communities. I think that we have to do some broader research and possibly some more longitudinal research. So I would say, again, not having done this, so my answer could be wrong, but chat room, set me straight here. Who's live right now? Who would know this? Whenever I think about how does this affect the community, of course, we can do research with people one-on-one in the community, but there's probably more stuff we need to do that will help give us a better understanding of the community as an ecosystem. And that's when I think of specialists in ethnographic research and anthropology. Some UX researchers have those backgrounds, and so great, you're ready for action. I do not have those backgrounds. So if I landed a project with that, I would probably bring in helpful peeps who have that education and experience. Austin says, I can't find the source. Don't quote me. Larry Marine says, let's see, let's put it up on the board when it comes up on my board. Here it is. Put it on the screen. Larry says, identify the intrinsic motivations that will help your users engage with your project. Yeah, and you can also identify both intrinsic and extrinsic, because some people are intrinsically motivated and some people are extrinsically motivated. So anything you can learn about motivations, behaviors, tasks, their environment and their context, their attitudes and mental models. There's a lot of stuff to try to consume. And I think another factor here is going to be trying to wrap your head around how many personas or groups or buckets of people or typologies do we have. Once you're talking about a community, it's probably not 2 personas. You probably have a huge bucket of very different people, but help yourself by not going by marketing demographics. Go to the microlessons playlist and see our show on task analysis personas. You will probably want to try to split these people up by some of their approaches to tasks or what their tasks are and some of their behaviors and knowledge around those tasks. That's what I would say. Smita, hi. Austin says, this is what many open source projects get right, or at least the popular ones. Yeah, I wouldn't know. I'm kind of not in that world. So anyway, everybody, we appear to have wrapped up for today. Perfect timing. We're just a little bit over. Thanks to everybody for hanging out. Good to see a lot of you, or all of you technically, but some of the returning peeps and the new peeps. And so I'm going to play us out of here, but just a reminder that the next show is going to be Friday reaction stream. And then we are back next Monday the 27th. We're doing another one of our panel discussions from people who've worked in UX for varying lengths of time. And we're going to learn from them what a day in the life of real UX work looks like, because I feel like some of these YouTube videos are just from the people at startups with free food and ping pong tables, and it doesn't really show you what the rest of us have. So we're going to have Maggie from the show, friend of the show, Nick Morgan, friend of the show, who usually shows up on YouTube as I Love UX, and super friend of the show, Shannon, who's been a guest before. So, and of course, Maggie was a guest when we did cooking eggs. So, and Nick was a guest. We did a whole show with Nick. Was it on mentoring? I can't remember now. But Austin says, I'm in too many worlds at this point. Hey, you can't have enough worlds. So join us Monday for that. And then don't forget, next Wednesday, the 29th, Bettina will be here, and she's going to be teaching us about crypto and NFTs, because good God of your choice, I don't get those things at all. I truly don't. So I want to know what we should know about those and what we as UXers should know about those, especially for people curious to learn more about these and to possibly work in these. So can't wait to hear from her on that. Hey, if you've got any suggestions for the show, either topics or guests, you know where to reach me. You can always hit the Delta CX website, or of course you can write to me on LinkedIn or in our Slack channel. I'm always looking for more ideas for guests and topics, because I usually do program the show straight through November. We break a little bit in December, and December gets a little more fluffy and friendly, and not too many hard-hitting topics, just so we can end the year with some laughs. But I usually do program shows through the end of November, so send people over. Do not ask them if they want to be on my show. That's for me, but do present who they are to me so I can see if they might be a match or if we've already had them. All right, everybody, please be safe. Even if you're vaccinated, please wear 17 masks and stay away from people not wearing masks. And Larry says knowledge design. I guess we haven't done a show specifically on knowledge design because we've done task analysis. Well, Larry, if you can come up with a show or micro lesson on knowledge design, ping me and let's plan it for October. LinkedIn user says favorite cryptos and blockchain. Yeah, I don't get this stuff at all, and I can't wait to get it. So everybody be well, and if you join us for the Friday reaction streams, I'll see you there. Otherwise, maybe see you next week for the shows and office hours. Have a good one. Bye. Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are